And on this account, which, by the way, was hosted on a Russian social media platform, there was really a medley of odd and disturbing material. Beside greasy burgers and fries and photos of women, there were also images of swastikas, people making a Nazi salute, Nazi paramilitaries, a notebook that had the words "murder garden" handwritten on it, and also a screenshot of the peak times that people would go to this outlet mall where the tragedy very sadly happened on Saturday. Chance.
That is an eye-opening report. Sasha Ingber, thank you. I want to bring in Brent Turvey now. He's a forensic criminologist and the author of a number of books on criminal profiling. Brent, there are still many unanswered questions in this case. Police are trying to figure out, though, to get to Sasha's point, if the suspect was influenced, if he was motivated by extremism. And initially, I was reading online as the coverage was coming in, people saying, wait, Latino man, white supremacy, that doesn't go together. That can't be. And now we're getting all this. How do people come across this sort of ideology? Who is most susceptible?
Well, first of all, let's address the issue of the idea that someone who's from Latin America or of Latin American descent can't be racist. That's just fundamentally wrong. There is a class system in Latin America, and it is based on skin color. The whiter your skin, and there are people who look exactly like me in Latin America, the lighter your skin, the higher your class and the more deference you're going to get socially. So that's the first thing, just to dispel that notion. Mm-hmm. There's a long tradition of sort of extreme right-wing classism and racism in Latin America. And the next part of that is that we have to accept that Latin America tends to follow U.S. political trends. So the idea that people coming over the border who are seeking to identify with sort of higher upper class or what they perceive to be upper class sort of white beliefs, that's a natural given. They would naturally gravitate towards that if they wanted to sort of prove something. So there's that. The people who are the most vulnerable, and I'm glad you put it that way, because that's the way to phrase it best. There are people who have been harmed and they perceive they've been harmed and they have a particular grievance. They have a grievance that they build. This is called the pathway to violence. It is a very steady progression from essentially being harmed and harboring that grievance for a very long time, and then developing a fantasy that is related to violence, and then planning it out, and then accumulating the material, the guns, the ammunition to do it, and then executing it. It's a very steady progression. And we've been aware of this for a very long time. But the other element is that we don't talk about often enough, because we're so busy sort of deifying the first responders, is that law enforcement and the military has a long history of associating themselves with these hate groups. The very emblems.
Okay, before we get to that, Brent,
are the same emblems.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
I want to stick on the profiling part of this, if we could, for a moment, because this is not you. In your line of work, you build profiles. 33-year-old Latino man, maybe white supremacist, is not the typical ideologically fueled attacker that we think of in America. As an expert in the field, what strikes you most about this case?
Well, I don't think in terms of typical. There's no such thing. That's the first thing to get rid of. The second thing is, he is very clearly someone who's harboring a grievance because of his expulsion from the military. Obviously, we have the military expulsion. We have his time working in security. We have other things that are going on. He's a person who's frightened. He's a person who's frightened, aggrieved, and weak. And that is, if you're looking for a profile, that's it. Someone who's frightened, aggrieved, and weak. And he wants to be perceived as threatening, strong, and he wants to be inspiring fear. That's his goal. So the goal to inspire fear is what unifies most of these individuals, because they themselves feel weak and frightened. So they want to adopt the symbology. They want to adopt the ideology. They want to adopt the sort of the modus operandi of the people that they revere and respect, who they believe have power, and frighten the masses. That's why they adopt all these multiple symbols, from the RWS to the swastika to all that stuff. That's just them adopting whatever they can to frighten people.
I see. Okay. And we even had this discussion internally that we are intentionally not showing all of the swastikas, all of the runes or whatever they're putting on their bodies because we don't want to feed into that. And that makes sense now why you're saying that. And so as we go a little bit deeper on this, violence is illegal. Hate speech is largely legal. Hateful ideology is legal in America. You're allowed to believe this stuff. And, you know, is there a way to recognize people at risk or even interrupt that cycle but stay on this side of the law? Because, you know, people are allowed to believe things you hate.
Okay, that's absolutely true. First of all, we have to understand that there are different kinds of violence. And speech can be a form of violence. Just ask any premises liability attorney. Speech can be violence. So not all speech is protected. Not all speech is legal. That's the first thing. The second thing is this particular individual, like many individuals before him, walked a straight, public, screaming line towards this behavior and towards this action. He made it very clear what his beliefs were. He made it very clear what it is he wanted to do. And he made it very clear that his desire was to frighten people and scare them. And I'm sure in the days to come, we're going to learn that the people around him saw him, observed him, and even possibly helped him accumulate the many weapons and amounts of ammunition that he used to commit this crime. No one is surprised by this. Okay. And when this happens, no one is surprised who was surrounding these individuals. These individuals are surrounded by people who are like, yep, I knew he was going to do it. Yet what's lacking is the mechanism to intervene or perhaps the will, because you can intervene. You can do 5150 holds on people that you think are violent. You can call the police. You can notify them, let them know. And very often, once people do intervene, it's often too late. So I don't think it's a great mystery, and I think it's our normalization of this stuff and our belief that it's not illegal to do certain things, like you just said. These wrong beliefs actually prevent people from acting, thinking, well, you know, this is the United States, you can do that. Actually, you probably can't. There's a lot of stuff you can't do that you're prohibited from doing that actually is illegal.
You can't incite violence.
Even as you lead up to violence. That's right.
Yeah, we know you cannot incite violence. You can say things that are unpopular or even really super hateful, but you cannot incite violence, as you say. And where's that line? So let me finish on this then, because profiling criminals. You know, and we're not doing this segment just for grotesque intrigue of, you know, something that's like in a docuseries. We're wondering, how do you get in front of this? And we've seen in recent attacks out there, the suspect has been older Asian men or young Hispanic men, middle-aged white or black men, a reportedly transgender man, a non-binary person, straight men, American citizens, immigrants. Is there a profile, Brent?
Yes, there is. It's very simple. These people have one thing in common, and that is access to firearms. That's the number one thing. Back when we did after Columbine, the FBI actually did a really good study on active school shooters, and they found that the number one factor was access to firearms. Then it's not just the legal ability to buy them. That's nonsense. It's just that they might have access in their home, or they might have people willing to buy them for them through strawman purchases. So that's the first thing, the access to firearms. The second thing, you have to have that combined with the ideological belief, the ideological dehumanization of a group of people, whether it's immigrants, whether it's women, whether it's people that work in a particular place that the person worked at. They have dehumanized a particular group through their ideology, and they have a grudge or they're harboring a grudge against that group. So that's the profile that you're looking for. You're looking for that access to those firearms, that ideological belief that dehumanizes people, and that particular grudge. And notice what I didn't mention is mental illness, because mental illness is not usually a factor. Mental illness is associated with people who are victims of crime, not correlated with people who commit crimes. Most nations have,
you know what? I'm glad you brought that up.
Mentally ill people that don't do it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because after this next break, I'm actually talking with a state senator in Texas. He represents Uvalde, and we're going to be talking about mental illness. So, forensic criminologist Brent Turvey, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.